President Biden in Wisconsin tonight, a key battleground state he carried by less than a percentage point in the 2020 election. Here's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki answering the question, why Wisconsin?
Wisconsin is a state where clearly there are Democrats, Republicans, independents, as we saw from the final outcome of the vote in November, people who have different points of view on a range of issues. And it was a state that where people have been impacted by the pandemic. They've been impacted by the economic downturn. And the president felt that he could have a good conversation with people about the path forward and also even people who disagree with him.
NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster spoke with voters ahead of Biden's town hall. He is joining me now from a chilly Milwaukee, but hey, it looks like it stopped snowing, so that's progress. Shaq, President Biden won Wisconsin by just over, we're getting there, right? He won Wisconsin by just over 20,000 votes, fueled by gains in typically conservative-leaning areas. So how do voters feel about the job he's been doing in his first few weeks of office?
You know, Allison, so many voters have told me they understand it's just his first 3 weeks or so into his presidency, so they're willing to give him some time. They want him to focus on COVID. But right now, many of them have said they're breathing a sigh of relief. I mean, we're here in Milwaukee, which is a Democratic stronghold in this state of Wisconsin, a state that President Biden won with such a narrow margin there, closer than even President Trump won just 4 years ago. So many of the Democrats here say they have just been breathing a sigh of relief. I spoke to one voter who compared it to having a destructive or disruptive person in your house for an extended period of time. And when that person leaves, you kind of look around for a second and take a sigh of relief. And that was kind of the sentiment that he said he was feeling at this point. But then, yes, there are, of course, Republicans here as well who are evaluating the presidency. I want you to listen to a little bit of my conversation with one of those Republicans I met yesterday on how he's viewing this Biden presidency.
My feelings about Joe Biden is that pretty much what Trump was saying, that he stole the election. I think that if he makes it in 4 years, I'd be very surprised. But he's there, and I mean, you know, as a Republican, I still am an American, you know, and he's the president, and I would abide by anything that he would say, and I would hope that he can get things done.
So you hear somewhat of that open door that he's leaving. He's someone who will likely never support President Biden, but is at least open to some of his different ideas. One of those ideas, for example, is President Biden's push to reopen schools within his first 100 days. Those elementary and middle schools, he wants to open them up in his first 100 days. This voter said that's something he can get on board with.
All right. Appreciate the open-minded attitude. That's a good thing there for all of us, Shaq. So what other issues are top of mind for voters there in Milwaukee right now?
You know, so many other issues. When you ask people to list them, you know, they have plenty of things that they bring up, especially in Milwaukee. You know, we're close to Kenosha, where just last summer, that was one of those flashpoints that we saw. So social justice is something that came up multiple times. But despite the many issues that they bring up, the top issue for nearly everyone is handling the pandemic. You hear from different people what exactly that means to them. They have different versions of that. So listen to a little bit of those conversations.
Get the kids back to school. That would be priority number one. And let's get some of these businesses back to where they're not starving.
Small business assistance, getting these small businesses the resources they need.
Let's focus on COVID, number one. All the doses that we can possibly buy in the world should be purchased with the United States Treasury.
What I want to hear, how can we make COVID a thing of the past? And I really appreciate President Biden for showing that leadership, showing that empathy, because, you know, it hits hard for us every day. Like, you know, my father is gone from COVID. And so, like, when I hear the name COVID and I hear on the news people dying, like, I'm reminded of it every day.
Allison, if you listen closely to what each person had to say, that focus on small businesses, the focus on reopening schools, the rush to get vaccines out the door, those are all elements of President Biden's rescue plan. So whether those people realize it or not, that's something that they're looking for, at least a different element of that legislation. And that's part of the reason why President Biden is coming here directly to Milwaukee to make that pitch to voters, to say, hey, I hear what you're interested in and focused on, and I want to cut through the noise and explain that rescue plan that he wants Congress to now pass. Allison.
Shaq, speaking of that rescue plan, we know that's why he's there. The state's Republican Senator Ron Johnson voted in the past to block COVID relief checks. He now is the target of a new ad campaign that is launching today. Coincidence or not? Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's a $1 million campaign ad from a progressive labor group that's going to be targeted to some of the major populations, major television markets across the state. You know, you heard it there at the beginning of our segment when you played that sound from the White House press secretary. She was asked, why is President Biden coming to Wisconsin, coming to Milwaukee on his inaugural domestic trip as president? And she said, oh, you know, there's Republicans and Democrats there. Well, plenty of people look at that and say, hey, there's a Republican senator up for re-election in a state that President Biden won. They think it's a way to put pressure on Ron Johnson. Hey, if you have at least some of the constituents pushing for Biden's rescue plan, they're thinking maybe that's a way to get the senator to support, if not the whole plan, certain elements of it. And I think this ad is part of that pressure that they're trying to put on the conservative Republican senator here who's up for re-election in just 2 years, again, in a state that President Biden flipped in 2020. Allison?
All right, Shaq in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'll say it again, we are glad to see at least the snow has stopped. I know it's freezing there. Thanks so much for all of your coverage out there in the cold, my friend. There you go.
Thank you, Allison.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.